Faith of an Old Warrior. Written by J. Crayton Smith. Copyright 2012. Narrated by J. Crayton Smith. Audio copyright 2022. Tralick rested his weary body by the large ice-covered boulder that shielded him from the freezing wind. He pulled his gray fur cloak tight around him and looked to the black cliffs. Not much further now. Hopefully these old bones could withstand the rest of the climb. It was cold enough in the village, but the higher into the mountains he climbed, the more Tralick was reminded of the age of his battle-ridden body. The old warrior brushed away the ice that had collected in his once flame-red beard and hair, now white from age. Tralick took the opportunity from a break in the winds. His body ached as he rose. He trudged through the knee-deep snow toward the black cliffs, the thick leather boots keeping out the wetness of the frozen fur coverings of the outside. It did not take long to find the hidden path at the base of the cliffs. The snow had come and gone nearly 50 seasons since he had secretly followed the shamans to the dragon caves, but he would never forget that day, or the path that led him there. Would Zeloria, the dragon goddess, even allow him entry? There were no shamans anymore. Tralick's plea would have to do. He was probably the last remaining member of his tribe that still held belief in the dragon goddess. He hoped that his trek would not be in vain, and that the dragon goddess would offer her aid. He entered a narrow cave opening hidden away behind the snow-covered boulders. It took only a few steps before all light was gone. Tralick placed one hand on the wall of the cave, the other on the hilt of his sword, and slowly fumbled his way through the cavern as it made its ascent. He felt for any turns along the wall and searched the ground below his feet with every step. There was no sound in the cave, and Tralick tried with every step to equal the silence. He was not sure what he would find, as the dragon altar at the base of the mountain had not been a place of worship for many seasons. Tralick could remember a time when his tribe actively worshipped Zeloria, the dragon goddess. Throughout his life, however, Tralick witnessed the birth of many new religions. Most faded away with the wind, but some took root and began to grow throughout the kingdom. The tribal elders began jumping from belief to belief, looking for the lessons that could be used for their own benefit. It did not take long before the elders tightened their rule over the tribesmen and drove the shamans out. Tralick could feel warmth beginning to grow in the air as he continued through the cave. He pressed onward until a faint glow of light could be seen ahead, golden and inviting. The light grew around him as the exit of the narrow passageway could be seen. The old warrior peered out into a massive room, adorned with decorative columns that reached the ceiling at a height of nearly 20 men. The light was coming from fires contained in large metal bowls cradled in the claws of numerous stone-carved dragons. The light from the fires cast an orange glow all about the room. It was identical to the images of his memory. Tralick mustered up the courage to step out of the shadows and into the sanctuary, something he could not do on his childhood visit. The room reached deep into the mountain, stretching on into the darkness. He marveled at the ornate carvings along the walls of the sanctuary, each one depicting a different dragon. Tralick turned to see the blueness of the sky through a massive opening in the chamber. He slowly made his way to the opening, amazed that the cold winds of the mountains did not make their way into the sanctuary. The view was extraordinary. There were snowy mountains as far as the eye could see. "You are no shaman." A voice came from his right, bringing Tralick's thoughts back to the task at hand. He turned to see a tall, slender woman standing at the edge of the opening, as if overseeing the mountain range beyond. The woman turned to face Tralick. She had long black braids that cascaded down from beneath a headdress fashioned in the shape of a red dragon's head, the nose and teeth of the dragon reaching out over her brow. Two large horns reached out behind the headdress, followed by smaller horns traveling down the back of the neck to end in a long black cape. She wore a white sleeveless tunic trimmed in red that reached to mid-thigh. On her forearm she wore red gauntlets that resembled dragon hide, with 3 claw-like spikes on the outer arm curving upward to the elbow. Her feet were clothed in knee-high boots fashioned identical to the red dragon hide gauntlets and headdress. Goddess Zaloria. Tralic immediately dropped to one knee, keeping his eyes to the ground. I am Tralic, from the tribe of Azor. I come to plead for my tribe, as no shaman resides there. He kept his head bowed, listening to Zaloria's footsteps circle him. It has been many seasons since you came here as a child, Tralic. Zaloria's voice echoed through the sanctuary. Yet you do not hide this time. Tralic's heart sped with nervousness. She knew of his previous visit. Forgive me, my goddess. He kept his gaze on the floor beneath him. That was childish snooping, nothing more. And this child grew to replace a shaman? Zaloria's voice was now closer. No, my goddess. The shamans are no more. Tralic saw the red dragon-hide boots step before him. He bowed his head further, ignoring the aching muscles of his legs and back. Tell me, child of Azor, what has become of your shamans? Banished, Tralic replied hesitantly. Banished? Zaloria's voice remained calm, but Tralic was uncomfortable with the question. Zaloria placed the tip of her finger below Tralic's chin and slowly raised his gaze to meet hers. Under what authority did this banishment take place? The tribal elders. Tralic could see the anger in her eyes despite the calmness of her voice. He did not want to anger the goddess, but feared not answering a direct question even more. The elders had no assistance from the dragons for many seasons. No one had seen the dragons since long before my birth. All that ever witnessed the dragons have long since died, and there was no more belief in the powers of the shamans. Have you ever seen a dragon, old one? Zaloria bowed her head slightly to look in Tralic's eye. No, my goddess. Yet you are here. Zaloria smiled. You seek our help, though you have never witnessed proof of our existence. Your faith differs from that of your tribe. Tralic did not respond, only lowered his head again. Rise, old warrior, and walk with me. Tralic raised his head to see the outstretched hand of Zaloria. Tralic took her hand in his and rose to his feet. What is your plea? She asked. The kingdom is under attack by raiders from the west. Tralic followed the goddess into the great hall of the sanctuary. They come in small bands, attacking the smaller settlements on the outskirts of the kingdom and move inland from there. The raiders draw near Azor. I do not know if the other clans have reached out to you for your help, but Azor desperately needs your assistance. No clans have reached out to us. Zaloria's voice faltered slightly. No one has reached out to us for a very long time. She stopped by one of the dragon statues with the flaming bowls. She gently caressed the statue and gazed intently at it. The old religions are being reduced to myth. New beliefs are spreading across many lands. We all must accept our place in time. Zaloria reached into the flaming bowl and withdrew a bouquet of flames in the palm of her hand. The flame had no source and did not burn her hand or the gauntlet of her arm. Zaloria slowly moved her hand to her lips and gently blew into the flames, sending a raging blast of fire against the far wall of the sanctuary. Tralic shielded his face from the intense heat of the blast until all grew quiet and there was no more heat. Tralic slowly lowered his arm from his face. He glanced at Zaloria fearfully, then to the wall. There were no burns, but where the fire had been focused he saw a golden door, one that had not been there before. We cannot aid your tribe. Zaloria closed her hand, extinguishing the flames. The tribe no longer looks to us, so we will not look to them. Let the tribe's new gods offer aid. Yes, my goddess. Tralic bowed his head and took a step back. I understand. Because of your faith, however, Zaloria motioned to the golden door. I offer you safety here. Reside in our temple and be our guardian. You will age no more, and you will never know death. Trellick thought on this for a moment. Nothing could have prepared him for this offer. He looked down at his left arm, at the small wooden beads wrapped around his wrist. He smiled at the thought of his granddaughter. He remembered how she fashioned the bracelet with the locks of her own hair during the trip to the market in the capital of Enovia. It was a thank you gift to Trellick, as many children were not taken on such long trips. Trellick briefly touched the small bracelet before taking another step back and kneeling to the ground once more. Many thanks, my goddess, but I cannot accept. My place is with my tribe, and their fate will be my own. The fate of your tribe, or the fate of the child that gave you this? Zaloria motioned to the wooden bracelet. She's my granddaughter, and she has no one else. I have vowed to protect her for as long as I can. If we cannot defeat the raiders, then I will flee with her. Very well, warrior. Zaloria pointed to the cave through which he had entered. But know this, never again will you be able to find the dragon sanctuary. Trellick made a final bow of his head, exited the sanctuary, and returned to the harsh winter of the mountains. He paused in the snow to look back at the cave, but the opening was gone, sealed with stone as though it never existed. Trellick touched the small bracelet once more, hoping he had made the right decision. It was nightfall when Trellick reached the base of the mountains. He could see the lighted torches from his village in the distance. He stopped only briefly to offer a silent prayer at the dragon altar before making his way to the village. Trellick approached the walls of the village, but was alarmed that there were no guards posted along the back wall. He banged hard on the large wooden doorway, but there was no answer. He pushed heavily on the door, and it slowly began to swing open. Inside the village, there was no one to be seen. Trellick hurried through the village, searching for anyone and fearing the worst. He ran through the pathways between huts and down the main roadways until he found a large army of tribesmen gathered at the front gates of the village. Archers had already taken position high along the walls. "Trellick," a warrior called out. Trellick hurried to his side. "Is the battle upon us, Morden?" Trellick asked. He glanced at the nervous tribesmen around him. "Aye, Trellick." Morden turned from his army. "How many?" "It's hard to say. They approach after nightfall." Morden then lowered his voice. "None of our scouts have returned. It would be best for you to go to your granddaughter. The women and children have already retreated into the mountains with a small group of warriors. This may be a bloody battle." "I've had my share of battles." Trellick took a step closer and placed his hand on the hilt of his sword. "As we have all heard around the tavern." Morden smiled as a few faint laughs could be heard from the tribesmen. "Step aside, Trellick." He placed a hand on Trellick's chest. "Your days are numbered, old friend. Don't end them stumbling into battle." "I will see this battle begin." Trellick's face heated at the faint laughs from his fellow tribesmen. "Only to retreat during peril to your granddaughter's side." Morden lowered his voice slightly. "I have seen it before. There's no use in you beginning the battle if you do not see it through to the end. I would rather do without your cowardice to begin with." "Coward?" Trellick's blood burned with rage. "You forget who trained you, Morden. And you forget who is in command." Morden raised his voice for all to hear as he snatched Trellick in close by his cloak. "You are under my command, and you will follow orders. You are not as strong as your desires. Learn your place, old man." "Trellick is no longer under your command." The voice rang throughout the ranks. All turned to see the goddess Zaloria approaching from behind the tribal army, carrying with her a mighty staff topped with bright orange flames. All older warriors dropped to a knee in respect and fear, snatching down the younger warriors who did not recognize her. Zaloria moved directly to Tralic and Morden, who were on one knee staring directly at the ground before them. She stepped to Tralic's side and turned to address the tribal army. Tralic has pledged his loyalty to me. Not a sound could be heard throughout the village, except for the distant battle drums from the raiders. Tralic alone has pledged his loyalty. Her voice was stern and angry. Do you pledge yourselves to me now? If I come down from my sanctuary and fight your wars for you, will you remember me? No one in the village stirred. Tralic came to me and pleaded for all of you, while many of you have turned your back on him. Zaloria's voice rose. I offered this warrior safety and immortality for his beliefs, and he chose to remain with his tribe and suffer the same fate as you. Do not question Tralic's actions. Do not question Tralic's intents, and do not question his abilities. Zaloria then turned her attention directly to Tralic. Rise, my champion, for you alone have caused me to see the error of my ways. Tralic slowly raised his head. Zaloria offered her hand as he rose to his feet. For the people to serve the gods, sometimes the gods must serve the people. Come with me, she whispered to Tralic. Rule by my side, and I will spare your village from destruction. Tralic turned to see his people, all kneeling before Zaloria. Deny me now, and all will surely perish. Tralic looked across the army. He had fought alongside many of these men. He had fought alongside many more who were no longer here. He raised his head to the back of the village, where the women and children silently hid, along with his beloved granddaughter. Why must it be this way? Zaloria placed a hand softly to his cheek. Not all sacrifice is flesh and blood. You alone carry the beliefs of the old ways. You alone throughout the entire kingdom of Enovia. She could see the anguish in his eyes. We do not ask that you abandon your Azor, but to rule over them and all of the tribes of Enovia. Take your place amongst the gods and rule over battle. Hear the pleas of the warriors and cast judgment based on your beliefs of loyalty. The silence was broken by the distant battle cries of the approaching raiders. Tralic turned his gaze one last time on his army, his fellow tribesmen. The old knelt in their newly rekindled faith, and the young trembled in fear. Tralic turned back to Zaloria and knelt once again. If it spares my people, if it spares my granddaughter, then I accept. Very well, Zaloria smiled. She then turned to address all in the village. Rise, children of Azor, and behold what the faith of one man can do for all of the land. The tribesmen slowly rose to their feet in confusion, not knowing what to expect. Zaloria lowered the flaming tip of her staff to the ground at Tralic's feet, and slowly circled him, leaving a ring of fire around his feet. Once in front of Tralic, she raised her hands to the sky and called out, Behold, I give you Tralic, my champion, and god of battle. A ring of fire blazed up intensely, then extinguished, scalding the ground. Tralic stood amidst the clearing smoke. His youth and strength were restored. His flaming red hair blew in the wind. His fur clothing was replaced with gold and silver armor, with the symbol of the goddess Zaloria emblazed on the chest plate. His fur cloak was replaced with a long, flowing cape of red dragon hide. Tralic ran his hands across his new armor. What had happened? He was strong and powerful again, no longer withering with age. The tribesmen stared in amazement and reverence at the sight of their kinsman and their new god. Zaloria raised one hand to the village gates and they instantly swung open. She walked to the entrance, motioning for Tralic to join her. Tralic could sense the movement of the approaching forces in the darkness, only a few field lengths from the village walls. A battle begins, my champion. Zaloria handed her staff to him. Cast your judgment. Tralic looked at the staff in his hand as Zaloria stepped aside. What was he supposed to do? He looked up again at the fast approaching forces and pointed the staff in their direction, hoping that some sort of magic contained in the staff would strike out at them. The air around him swirled as the sound of heavy flapping came from overhead. All turned to the sky as the dark shadow of 3 dragons swept past. There came monstrous roars from the beast as fire rained down on the enemy forces from the darkness. The cries of the raiders could be heard as the dragons attacked, circled out, and swooped in for another assault. As quickly as it had begun, it was over. Tralick turned to see the shadowy dragon forms flying off into the mountain range. The few raiders that had survived quickly retreated. Tralick looked down to his people, all silently standing in disbelief. Morden dropped to his knee. All hail Tralick, child of Azor, god of battle. All tribesmen followed their commander's actions, all cheering the praises of Tralick. Zeloria joined him at his side as Tralick returned her staff. "Worship as you will," Zeloria raised her voice over the crowd, causing them to silence. "But know that I will never again summon the dragons of old into battle. Tralick will hear your prayers from battle, and I bestow upon him dominion over all warrior dragons." Zeloria turned to Tralick and extended her hand. "Come, my champion. We have many things to show you, many things to teach." Tralick placed his hand in hers. In Zeloria's hand he found the small wooden bracelet. "She will be safe, and you shall see her again. You have my word." Tralick smiled as he closed his fist tight around his granddaughter's bracelet. He looked to the mountains where the women and children took refuge. "Please grant me the time to say goodbye, then the rest of my time is yours." Zeloria nodded with a smile as she placed her hand on Tralick's shoulder. She raised her staff high above her head. There was a great blaze from the ground that engulfed the pair. When the blaze extinguished, both god and goddess had vanished. The end. Thank you for listening.